And we are live.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Board of Health meeting for Wednesday, February 26, 2025. I will call the meeting to order. Moving on to agenda item number 2, roll call.
Joyce Gilmore here.
John Bickner here.
Colleen Straponi here.
Jack Maholo here.
Alan Greenberg here. Gang's all here. All right. Good and welfare for the public.
We do not have anybody online or in the audience in person.
All right, moving along. Agenda item number 4, new business. FY26 budget review and discussion.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I presented the board a copy of the proposed Board of Health budget for the upcoming fiscal year 2026. Looking for any commentary and discussion on the amounts I have proposed. As you can see, the only increases would be the salary and wages due to the COLA increase. Salary and wages are going up by 30%. The next increase would be testing the lake and the landfill. The lake part of it is going to be going up 5%, and that's due to the services increase by Michael Beck. The next increase would be the municipal trash collection and disposal. The municipal portion is going up $850. Again, that's due to the annual contract increase. And that will also follow for the subscriber trash collection. That's also going up by 4%. And subscriber trash disposal by wind waste is going up by 3%. Again, that's with the annual contract increase. So total overall for municipal expenses, I'm increasing it by 2%, $3,375. And total subscriber trash expenses is going by 4% for $25,900. So overall Board of Health budget total increase is 4% for $29,275.
Okay, now. Tom, Joyce, do you have anything on this?
No, I mean, we had gone over this before and I was pretty comfortable with that because what can you do? So,
Well, at least we have some pretty solid numbers. to
Yeah.
Support those
right,
increases.
right, exactly, yeah,
They're not surprises. It's a,
right,
the math doesn't lie.
right.
Couple of questions. So just, will you put in an amount, Jack, for the enterprise fund? We didn't actually use that for fiscal year 25, correct?
No, we were still doing the same way we have been doing it for all the years.
So really, we shouldn't see a number there.
I'm sorry?
We shouldn't see a number there under FY 25, right? We shouldn't see anything there because we didn't use it.
25, no, I just added in enterprise fund for this fiscal year 26 column.
Well, I'm just saying, you said listed under the FY 25, we didn't do
No,
anything.
we didn't do anything for 25.
So really, that should be nothing, should be nothing.
Okay.
Visual, I'm just saying. I see what you're doing for 26, but you just had it under the FY 25. It's just looks
I
as if,
understand, but for 2025, we spent $6,552. But the enterprise fund, I'm just putting in for fiscal year 26.
no, I understand. I'm saying, so somebody looking at this, somebody might think that we actually had dollars in the enterprise fund.
Right, I'll remove it just so it doesn't cause any concerns.
I just think it all ends up, it was all considered under general funds we determined last cycle.
Correct.
So I think the entire amount should technically be listed under general fund, I think. I don't know what anyone else thinks from a viewpoint, but I see where you're breaking
Well,
it
not
down.
really, because we have a subscriber program. And even though that money didn't go into the enterprise account the way it originally was supposed to,
Right,
that money was in a separate pocket outside of the general fund.
it never really did do that. It stayed within the general fund. That's the issue that we had in all the conversations. It never switched over.
Well, okay, I realize it never switched over, but it was all subscriber money that was collected and put in a pocket somewhere. I don't know what, maybe I don't know what the appropriate pocket name it was. And then it was expended to pay for the subscriber. So it was subscriber money collected and subscriber money spent.
Mhm.
So maybe enterprise fund should go away,
Correct. I
but
just-
total trash expenses,
Subscriber to that
it
trash.
was still the 652,500.
Yeah, the allocation. I just meant the reference to the enterprise fund.
Okay,
Sorry.
so,
So I'll remove that, so there's no.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay,
We just
yeah.
didn't use enterprise.
okay, so we're
That's
gonna
all.
take enterprise fund off, but we're
Yeah.
gonna keep the column
Right,
and we're gonna
Yeah.
keep the amounts.
Yes.
yeah,
Okay,
I mean, somewhere, yeah, if you just take enterprise fund off and just call it subscriber trash, then that gives you the breakdown. Yeah.
right.
okay,
Yeah.
I agree with that and I understand the
Yeah.
reasoning
That's all,
behind
that's
it
what I-
so that we
yeah.
don't mislead anyone.
Yep.
What was supposed to happen didn't happen. and
Yep.
We understand.
Yep.
Now it's gonna change.
Yep.
Now, anything else, Tom?
I did have a question about, down in the list, we have municipal trash collection disposal
Mhm.
on our budget.
Yes. Because that's part of the E.L. Harvey contract.
So is that anticipated to stay in this account under our budget?
As far as I'm concerned, yes, because I have two budgets on the accounting software.
Yep.
Where I'm in charge of the trash and the Board of Health.
Okay.
So
So,
Jeremy, when I had my meeting, Colleen and I had our meeting with Jeremy, it would stay with the Board of Health with the budget. It may be prorated somewhere else or allocated somewhere else. Right here, it's gonna be within our budget proposal.
so you're under the impression that it's gonna stay in this account?
Yes,
He's not under the impression, he's been told that it stays in that account.
The only reason I'm asking is, in a follow-up conversation, I was told that it will not remain in this account. I was told that it will move into a 530 account.
a 530 account.
And what is a 530 account, Tom?
That is, I think, an account that's used under the general town hall list of accounts, I believe.
Okay, because
As opposed
I
to a 512. which is what-
had a similar question relating to that.
Yeah. So I don't know if that came up after you and Colleen met.
That's the enterprise account. And that has to move into that because it's all part of the contract and the fees that no, sorry, no, you're right. Because that's the municipal trash, that's not, the subscribers are not paying for that.
Yeah, my understanding is,
That's where my question is.
right.
Yeah, no, it was gonna be separate. You're absolutely
So my understanding is it's going into the municipal trash collection category that the town has. So it would not come into the Board of Health, but it would go under categorized differently.
Okay, so I guess my question is, in simpler terms, we're finally gonna cross that threshold
Right.
where the subscribers are not gonna have the municipal trash expense. As according to our previous conversations. And then there aren't going to be any, fees charged to us for a period of 3 years,
Correct.
so that we can kind of get a handle
Mhm.
on what the appropriate number should be.
Well, when you say fees, you're actually talking about
Yeah, that's it.
in costs that
Yeah.
might get associated,
Yeah,
indirect costs that might get associated. I don't want to mislead if somebody's hearing the term fees, listening to this.
Indirect costs.
It's indirect costs.
yeah, I couldn't think of indirect, but that's where I was going, so thank you very much for
Yeah,
we're all working on vocabulary, Tom. Yeah, no, I guess I just wanted to make sure that we're finally crossing that threshold and getting to where we've been trying to get for a number of years. And we've had some very productive conversations with the town administrator. He's got a broad knowledge
Yes, he
of this.
he does.
So
In a great
I guess that's my excitement
Yeah.
and my lack of vocabulary.
and again, I believe that we're due to meet with the select board next week
March 5th.
to specifically kind of run through this in more detail. So things like this may come up a little bit more in depth in that conversation. But to my understanding, there will be an adjustment on this allocation as you're currently presenting it now. That's all.
Well, I'll be going to Jeremy's office first thing tomorrow morning and say, what is this for the account? I don't want to present something that I'm not supposed to be presenting on.
No, understood.
Are we meeting with Jeremy at some point? Well, no. Okay.
Not individually, right?
Well,
No.
I anticipate Jeremy will be part of the meeting when we meet with the select board.
Correct. We'll
So
be
that's
on
what
the select
we'll
board in the finance committee on March 6th.
Right, so we'll see Jeremy at that meeting.
Yes.
Okay,
So that was a 530 account, you said?
Yeah, it was termed that way. I don't know what specifically the full account number was, but it was, and I mentioned it's supposed to go into a 530 account. There must be a category.
Yeah.
Yeah, there must be a category of numbers that we go by in the town, and it was just mentioned it would be a 530
Okay.
account number,
yeah, it probably has something to do with the accounting system that they use.
right?
Every category has different prefixes.
Because I just wouldn't think, given it's municipal now, it would necessarily be in our budget.
To be honest with you, I don't care where it is, as long as it's funded correctly,
No, understood.
you know? And obviously, just like have been told, where the money didn't go into the enterprise account, even though the enterprise account was voted on and approved.
Right.
There are certain things that go on in the background of accounting,
Mhm.
Especially on a municipal level,
Mhm.
that even though it might not make 100% sense to us, there's a reason why it flows the way it flows
Yep.
on their end of things. So, I guess my major concern is, again, the fact that we're finally crossing that threshold, and
Right,
we've got a 3-year period to get a good handle on the indirect costs, so that when we do this, we're not guessing.
Mm.
We're doing it, we're going by the numbers, which is, should be fair and equitable for everybody.
Absolutely.
And that's where we've been heading for these years.
the only thing I would add is, and I don't know if we ever came to a final conclusion on this, but up in the salary area, with regard to what's referenced under our account, I always kind of wondered why there wasn't more monies associated with Jack's position in our Board of Health account. Because it only references a portion of what he's paid in our account.
Correct.
And that may be a question for next week, when we actually meet with when we actually go through the budget. We can propose it at that time. I know there's a small number, like the 5 hours that could allocate for the inspector part. I could see where that may not be
And
here,
specifically, and up to Jeremy at our meeting.
right? But I think there's a little bit more that still falls under his salary as a health administrator that I would think would fall, unless again, they might be doing something that I'm just not home and understanding.
You
Yeah,
both.
There was some talk or discussion of going back a year ago
Mhm.
with our previous tax collector as to how she was maybe being advised to divide you up. And it didn't make sense because it was almost like a 50-50.
For my previous finance director, she was not aware of the 50-50 because that's how it was split. 50% of my salary was Board of Health, 50% was under the inspectional services. And we all agreed that it was going to be 35 hours Board of Health, 5 hours inspectional services. And she was not aware of that.
Okay.
But again, it's left it alone.
So maybe it was our previous town administrator that did that on her
Correct.
way out.
There's something we can clarify.
Yeah, but I remember the conversation and the brief discussion as to that number didn't make complete sense.
Mhm.
We didn't feel as though it was a accurate representation.
Jeremy's really has a handle on, the operating budget as a whole and what needs to be reallocated in different departments and whatnot. I mean, I really got that takeaway. That was my takeaway from it. I mean, this is his area of expertise. Jack and I have had a couple of conversations with him.
Mhm.
And I think that he understands, that he needs to take a look at Jack's salary in particular, as far as the allocation goes. He realizes that. So I'm sure, and I'm confident that in the FY 26 operating budget, you'll see the corrections. He's working on that now.
Again, it's just more clarification when we actually do the formal meeting with the budget, when you meet the
Right.
select board.
And there was a live video meeting between you, Vice Chairman, and AJ Bickner at the time. AJ Fisk at the time, talking to Kim about the 35 and 5 hours. Because again, when I was going through the budget, I'm like, I just wanted to clarify, it was discussed with the previous administrator that it was 35 and 5 and she agreed.
Right, and that was prior to your hire,
Correct.
because the position changed. It evolved from what it was to what it was going to be. Right, good, good. So everything's documented. Jeremy has a very good way of explaining it. So I look forward to that.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, he's very sharp. He's on it. He knows what he's doing.
absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, this is definitely his, area of expertise.
Well, I appreciate his explanation.
Mhm.
It's almost like listening to a judge,
Mhm.
you know, how this is the law. And this is, you know, how it works. All right. Anything else on the budget?
No, that's all I had.
Joyce, you good?
Yep.
All right, I'm good.
So I'll try and meet with Jeremy tomorrow to talk about the salary wages. And the municipal trash account for 5:30. And see if I can clear this up and also get rid of the word enterprise fund. So make it more clear.
Excuse me. Old business. 4549 Uxbridge Road. Blasting update. Blast testing update. You
Oh. I thought you were gonna do it. So we've
It
got.
doesn't have her name next.
Well, actually, I mean, we're working on it together, you know what I mean, and with Tom too. So Tom, we had a couple of conversations with Tom so far, and he named this particular individual, Adam. What's
Unulis.
Thank
What
you.
was it? Can you spell that for me?
Yeah, Adam and Unulis, YANULIS.
From Ty and Bond, and he's gonna be preparing a scope of work for us and the cost, so we're hopeful. So Tom kind of like to have it for the next board meeting. In the meantime, too, we're working on writing up a regulation. It's either gonna be a regulation or we're gonna incorporate it into the water regulations is for specifications for blasting and what the board would be looking for from, you know, the contractor at the time. So I'm in the process of drafting up some verbiage for Tom to take a look at and Jack to take a look at. Haven't decided which way we should go. I think maybe the board will probably ultimately make that decision. It's either gonna be its own regulation or we're gonna incorporate it into the well testing, just so that we have language and we have a regulation that we can rely upon as far as enforcement goes.
Right.
You know, so we don't have another situation with a blasting issue, and we really don't have the regulation to enforce it other than, you know, mass general law, and obviously if there were any damages and whatnot. We're looking more specific to the pre and post blast testing, and any type of, you know, chemicals that come into the water and what those levels are, what the acceptable levels are. And so I think it's important that we have something like that.
Yeah, I agree.
Would it be prudent to talk to a blasting company and find out if there are different categories of blasting?
Yes, there are.
Okay, because I'm like, when I built my barn back in 1994, we had to blast a little bit of ledge. Now, I would consider that a very small scale. There was on Blackstone Street, I can't remember the number of the house, somewhere in the, must be the 150s. I remember when they did a lot of blasting and they increased the size of the house probably by 200%. And I remember the neighbor having a problem with their well.
Mhm.
And I wasn't on the board back then.
Is that the Ahern's?
Across the street from Ernst.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm trying to get Hankard. He was an electrician. He was the owner of the home at the time. And the two homes involved, the blasting and the one who had problems with their well, fairly close together, probably 150 feet separating the homes. But again, it was an extensive blast in my view, because they were there for a couple of days. And obviously, if it contaminated the neighbor's well, I would consider that on the extensive side. I don't know what the resolution was to that, but someone who's got to do a little bit of blasting should be a certain level, and there should be certain requirements. And then you kind of go up.
Yes, the CMR regulations specifically addresses that.
Okay.
And that's where like the fire department and the fire department's application and whatnot, it's all written there. So, taking little bits and pieces of different types of information and incorporating it into the regulation for the board to consider.
Okay,
to
because
take a look at.
obviously what happened on Uxbridge Road to people in Mendon is huge. But then you go to Milford down to Fortune Boulevard, and I believe that was governed by the federal government. And it was classified like as a quarrying operation,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I believe they had federal ID numbers and everything. So that's really big.
Yeah,
So obviously, as you go up the ladder of significance,
right.
the rules, regulations, testing should
And then
represent that.
Right, and the CMR reg addresses
Okay.
addresses those various levels specifically. Well, what I think we're looking at is, the impact on, say, that budding well, and what the resolution is gonna be, or what the board will expect the contractor to do to resolve it in accordance with that regulation. So at least we have something that we can enforce. That's, so, and the statutory abutter is 250 feet. So I thought that we would incorporate that into our regulation. The board can take a look at it. If you decide that you want it larger, the area larger than that, we can do whatever we want. Tom is going to take a look at it as well. So we'll have something comprehensive.
If I happen to remember, I'll knock on my neighbor's door and see if he's willing to share what the final resolution was on that particular issue.
Yep.
Just so that I can share it with the board.
Because like under the CMR reg, it also requires the abutters list and the notification of the blasting. I mean, there's very specific, a very specific order that they have to follow under that CMR regulation. The notification, the pre-inspection prior to the blasting. There's a form, there's a complaint form that the resident can file. It's all laid out there. The only thing they don't address in that regulation, why would they, would be if, your on-site septic system or your well is negatively impacted due to the blasting. And that's something where the board should address that in its own regulation.
Okay, now, as you go up those levels, is there a point where noise nuisance comes into effect?
Yeah.
I'm thinking the rock hammering that often, as you go up the scale, the rock hammering kind of becomes part of the blasting operation.
Yeah.
And,
There's a noise or decibel reading, that's in that regulation.
okay, just making sure that we try to cover as much as we
Yeah.
can within reason.
I mean, we can also take that part of that regulation and we can incorporate it into our own, because we are charged with that with that responsibility as far as if we get a noise complaint, or, a dust complaint, things like that, that's the board's responsibility. So we can also put that and incorporate that into our regulation. I was gonna reach out to the fire chief.
Yeah, absolutely. Or even highway,
Yeah.
John
Oh,
may
yeah,
have,
that's a good idea.
John may have something that he may wanna, add, he may have some concerns of his own.
Yep.
With,
Good
proximity to a culvert, and it's an old culvert, he doesn't want it to collapse in on itself from the shock waves, et cetera. So,
Will be a collaboration, that's for sure.
yeah, and that's the best way,
Yeah, absolutely.
but,
Yeah, then
I
the
mean,
right
Tom
hand knows
kind
what
of
the left hand
thought
is
this was
doing.
coming down the road, so.
Yeah, I think as far as what we ultimately decide is, I think is a combination here of applying the blasting element to our private well regulations. But I also think that a separate blasting regulation would probably be in order as well. You have it in both places, one can reference the other. I think that way, if you have blasting regulations, you could be a little more of a breakdown, a little more detail in how you define certain things like the scales that you're talking about, right? I don't know that you'd want to have that all in your well regs,
No,
but
Yeah, I
That'd be
mean,
something.
like I said, sometimes, someone goes to put a built-in pool in and they gotta bring a rock hammer in for a day.
Yeah.
Well, that's very different than bringing a rock hammer in for 3 months.
mhm,
So the rules and regulations need to kind of escalate as you go up that scale.
yeah, I'm just saying that with those scales you described, a very good point. Something like that would probably be best described in a regulation versus trying to do that under private well regulations. That's all.
yeah, I agree,
Yeah.
because the thing is too, is that, we have to also address, any on-site septic systems as well, so actually it should just be its own regulation, like you said. We can reference it, like you said, within the well regulations
Mhm.
that, and cover the well component of, of blasting. But then refer within those regulations to the blasting regulations themselves.
Okay, so obviously that process is gonna take some time.
Yeah,
You're gonna take some thought. So we're almost crossing the finish line with getting our well regs updated. So like addressing the ADUs, we talked about keeping a placeholder
yep,
within the regs. So perhaps we need to have a placeholder for a portion of the blasting.
right. That's kind of what we talked with Tom about when he was on, about incorporating some sort of a paragraph within there. So we cover wells now within our well regulations right now.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be completed,
Right.
but if there's a spot for it,
Mhm.
so that when we get that all finished up, just like we decide how to handle the ADUs, it can be plugged in without disrupting
Yeah.
everything that we've been
Correct.
working on for a long period of time.
Mhm.
I'm good.
I did have a question for Colleen, or even Jack. Did you happen to get those 2 additional test results from Andrew?
There was only one test.
Only
There
one.
was only one test.
And out of curiosity, how did that look in comparison to the pre-blast?
Unremarkable.
Was it any different?
There were some differences. I mean, I can't recall it off the top of my head. I'd have to go back and revisit, but there wasn't anything that jumped out at me.
Would you say they were pretty similar to the pre-blast test result that was done by?
Let me go back and take a look at it and then I'll tell, I'll tell you for sure, because I can't say for sure and I don't wanna
Oh, yeah.
Right.
elaborate.
Do you have an idea time-wise when that test was done?
May, it was almost
But to be year,
to that, yeah,
so
almost,
23.
Almost
Yeah.
a year to the time when they did the pre?
Yeah.
almost, yeah,
Okay.
yep,
That's good, because same time of year, most likely same environmental conditions.
yep.
Well, I know that you're working with the state hydrogeologist. So I can forward you a copy of that 2023 report, see if he would take a look at those as well.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part. You said,
Were you talking with some guy from Massachusetts?
yeah, they're the same person that Colleen was talking to, Joe Cerruti.
All right,
So
so send him a copy of the 2023 report.
could do that as well. Yeah, because he sent him a copy of the other reports we had, pre and post blast test results. And on that topic, I just to update the board, I did have a follow-up communication with Joe. I did send him, Jack was able to do some digging. And he connected with our fire chief. And the fire chief provided him a plethora of information. Some 42 files of data regarding the blasting.
Wow.
A lot of it was kind of non-related to what I think what Joe was looking for, but quite extensive in what they need to be tracking information-wise when they do these things. They have a checklist every day when they're going to be blasting that they go through. They have a seismograph information that they record on each blast that they do, as well as an actual blasting report that, I had a copy for each, for yourself. And it went to Jack, and I don't know if Jack and Colleen have actually reviewed it, but
Yep.
Just so you know, that's a sample of what I sent Joe. I sent him 4 of, I think there was 6 or 7 that were included in the packet from, that Jack got from the fire chief. So I just grabbed 4. They were all pretty similar in nature. And I think it's the bottom part of the second page there that would be of interest to Joe. And I think it defines the materials or describing material being used in the blast at the compounds. They were all pretty similar as far as the general compound that's being referenced, the part number, manufacturer, but there might have been some deviation in the electronic component, but blast material itself seemed to be pretty much the same throughout all those test reports. So that's what I sent to Joe, and I just told him when he has a chance to kind of go through and, assess, reach back out to us. And
That's pretty.
pretty detailed,
Oh, it looks like they videoed it
Absolutely.
too.
as it should be.
Yeah, shot videotaped.
Yeah.
So you can see exactly what goes on.
Yeah, they video recorded each of the blasts as well. There were the MPEG files or JPEGs that were included in that packet.
Yep.
So they're actually live angles, camera shots of the blasts going off. That they do so.
Technology,
What's that?
Yeah.
technology.
Technology, that's right. It's not just fire in the hole anymore,
Like back in the day.
back in the day.
All right. Anything else on this topic?
No.
All right, so we'll move on to Mendon private well regulation update.
So we don't have a final draft yet from Tom Ryder, our BOH engineer. They did relay the board's request to put in a section for the ADUs when the time comes to incorporate those regulations regarding the private wells. I'll also reach out to him regarding the blasting portion for private well regs as well. But nothing as of yet for an update from Tom Ryder.
All right, very good. Any questions? No one in the audience?
Anybody on?
No.
Nobody on.
Okay. Excuse me, Old Mendon landfill permit modification response from DEP.
All right, so on February 20th, the Mass DEP has received the updated response to the landfill modification permit, so the ball is now in their court for their review and decision. This is from Atlas, where they updated their permit modification. So we're just waiting to hear back from Mass DEP.
I guess there was one element that the board recalled when it was first submitted, we answered none to with regard to in the compliance history under enforcement type. Well, it was answered none because what isn't captured on or what isn't showing when you fill that out, it's just some reference to within X amount of years, or what wasn't picked up on the other end. So that's what it actually says when they were filling it out, and there was no enforcement action within the last 5 years. Apparently, that wasn't realized by the DEP and by Greg. So Nathan did mention that, but that's why it was answered none originally. And Greg was thankful he pointed that out, because apparently when it gets through the process, it doesn't carry that piece through there. So Greg saw it as like, oh, none at all. So that's
Right.
why he came back saying, wait a minute, there was 20 years ago,
Yeah, 20 years ago.
but nothing within the last 5, and that's why it was originally answered the way it was.
So it wasn't answered incorrect.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Got that.
And on the Linville aspect, Tom was able to coordinate with Jennifer Slade the keys, so we do have the keys for the caps now in the office.
Oh,
Okay.
nice, that's good, yeah.
Yeah, she had reached out, she
So
had
all
my
that's
number.
repaired.
Yes,
And they had somebody who was gonna be amended, what was it, last week,
that's
Right.
right.
Friday? And I had him come out, and Jack gave me a suggestion. I forgot it was Friday. I confirmed it with her on Thursday, and I forgot, oh, Fridays normally we're off. I checked with Jack, and Jack said, well, I'm only here till 10:30. Okay. At first I asked him, said, hey, can you stay a little longer? And then he was amenable to that. Then Jack said, wait a
Of
minute.
course he was.
He said, how about the Dropbox? I said, yeah, great idea. So I got back in touch and had the gentleman put the keys in the Dropbox. Jack got them, and
Okay, what was the final bill for that? Do you recall?
Something-
Yeah, it's all been taken care of.
Yeah.
Good, good. So we're in good shape down there, other than the sinkholes and the catch basin.
Correct.
I'll say it again. I would be willing if we could get together as a team and try to accomplish the sinkhole portion. And we need to get in line with the highway for getting the catch basin done.
Mhm.
But I don't see any reason why, based on what little I know about the actual sinkholes, because I don't think they're that big, that we couldn't very possibly accomplish that on our own.
Yeah. Okay.
have there been any recent conversations out of curiosity with John about that site?
No, they said once the truck came back, I'm sure the truck came back whatever he needed, but then winter came.
Okay.
So I'm assuming he's waiting for the ground to thaw.
No,
Well,
Oh,
yeah. And the next thing is be waiting for things to dry up a little bit.
Yeah,
Right,
But like I said, let's see if we can't get in line.
I'll put it back on his radar.
Yeah,
And things are sucked.
Yeah, because I mean, you can't do it if it's full of water.
Mhm.
But if we're in line and all the equipment holds together, or if for some reason DEP wants to know where it is on the schedule,
Yeah.
we can give them an honest and accurate answer.
Mhm.
Mhm.
The other things, the sinkholes, we should be able to accomplish them first thing, like April 1st.
Mm.
We just gotta measure them off and calculate the amount of material that we need. But I don't think that'll be a big deal. I mean, if everybody's willing to go that route.
Sure.
Go the town with love.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Put your work boots on, get your shovel.
There you go. I think I can, on my own, I can get it to the point where all we need to do is finish rake it and seed it.
Mm.
I'll just go down with my little machine. Once I get, the delivery and, get it all moved around, and it'll be just a matter of, raking it out and seeding it. All right. Anything else on that? Okay, moving right along. BOH admin updates, please.
So property update on Providence Street. This is where I'm requesting the check for reimbursement of $150 of source. Get what I have received.
your check,
Nothing. Still.
right.
Okay.
Well, they just raised their fees for the gas delivery, so they should be having plenty of dough right now.
But I'm getting a response back. I'm still working on,
Okay, but we do have confirmation that they agreed to pay it.
yeah,
Did you,
So
send
we're good.
flowers?
what's that?
Did you send flowers?
No,
That might have gotten it.
I'll send something else.
Yeah,
All right, well, we'll show a little more patience.
That's all I got is a little more patience.
right.
Excuse me, do you remember how long ago we got the confirmation that they were gonna pay it?
October.
So April will be 6 months. All right, so after April 1st, we have to go a different route,
11
you know,
from.
or,
council.
you know, phone call
The,
to one of our,
congressman.
yeah, or one of our reps.
Oh, yeah.
Just to, you got another number
Solid 7.
or another address that,
Yeah,
Let's put on the news, Solid 7.
especially since they just raised their uh, services a huge amount. Huge.
Yeah, I thought we get 10% back.
Well, not because somebody
yeah.
That's because Ben has our back.
That's right.
It was on
That was one of the worst deals I ever heard.
Channel 5 story.
Yeah,
That
we'll give you a 10% breakdown, but in the months when you're using less, we're gonna charge you that 10% plus interest. What kind of a deal is that?
That is pathetic.
Well, weren't they basing the uptick in the fees, like on the provider piece or the supplier or vendor part as opposed to the,
I
there
think
was
it's,
some specific element that
I think it wasn't on the actual electricity or gas, so that would be the supply. It was on the delivery side,
the delivery said.
because they're saying that they've had to spend so much money
Right.
updating the infrastructure.
Yeah, that was it, delivery said.
So that's what they're blaming it on, but
Get a
Anyway,
grip.
Robert.
that did not sound like a very good deal to me.
No, that's kind of.
Get a
Is that
grip,
part
that's what I
two
say.
About, I'll pay for a cheeseburger.
Oh, that was, Popeye.
Yeah. Well, how does that?
I'll pay for a cheeseburger today. And I'll pay you tomorrow. I'll receive a cheeseburger today. And I'll pay for it tomorrow.
Yeah. That deal.
I do.
The same thing.
I love spinach.
That's right. I forget the saying now.
Yeah, I can't say I can,
Like, you'll feed them now, but I'll pay you later.
I must have been too distracted by olive oil.
she was a good looking gal. All right, moving on. VNA additional services update, please.
All right, as we recall, the VNA was looking for additional blood pressure clinics. I reached out to Ann Labonte about that. She's waiting to hear back from Nancy. Nancy's the nurse that does the blood pressure clinics at the senior center. She's on vacation. She's not coming back till March 4th. So we'll have more detailed information about costs. But after talking to Ann, she says, we'll charge Mendon, but I really don't think there's a need for it. But that's just her opinion.
Okay.
She goes, if you guys want it, well, then have to draw up another contract, it's gonna cost you. But she doesn't think there will be a need for it. So I asked her when Nancy comes back, how many people are taking advantage of the services now? It's 1, 2, 3, or 4 a week.
Had there been any follow-up conversation with Amy just to get her take on what she thought?
She was gonna reach out to Amy, she didn't say anything to me, but
Okay. 'Cause that'll probably gauge whether or not we might decide where the quote-unquote value versus benefit comes into play. Um,
Yeah, Amy would have a pretty good idea of approximately how many participate in the VP clinics on a regular basis.
And right now it's done, what's the frequency?
once a month.
Once a month. So we kind of have two options. One option would be for those people that want to take advantage of the program, they need to fit that in their schedule. They need to make that like a doctor's appointment. They need to show up that once a month. On the other hand, we can pay whatever, it's X right now, we can pay that number to make it more frequent. But if at the end of the month, we're only doing the same number of BPs, doesn't make sense.
Right.
You know, it's a kind of an expensive convenience to have 2 days, so until we get a number. I mean, sometimes when you want to take advantage of the service, you have to make yourself available and take advantage of that service.
Well, you know, given that the population we're talking about, we might have to consider that lifestyle, what that population contends with as far as, you know, movability and, you know, things of that nature. That's all.
Well, the thing of it is if they, you know, if they can't get, if they're not mobile and they're not able to come to the, then they need to make different arrangements with the visiting nurses at a different, you know, that they will come and see them or,
They have the VNA go to them, you mean?
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. You know, and the doctor will order that,
Right.
you know, because I know Salmon is doing a lot of that stuff now.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely want to accommodate people, but sometimes when you make multiple dates, in the end, you only end up seeing the same amount of people. You really don't gain what you were intending to gain
Mhm.
by increasing the
Right.
frequency.
Yeah.
So it's just something we'll have to consider and discuss.
I think you did get a number, right, roughly, price wise?
Yeah, so it would be another $55 a year.
And that was based on
12,
going
Every other week.
to every other week. Was that every other week or every week?
I won't say it's every other week. I'll have to look back at my email.
Did the request come from Amy herself? For the additional BP?
It is what I heard that Amy said, so I reached out to Ann Labonte to ask her if she knew anything about it. She kind of said yes, but I don't think it's really necessary.
How it all originated was actually, I was down at the senior center for a program presentation.
Tom's on everything.
Absolutely, yeah. You can use mine.
Did it make your blood pressure rise?
No, I didn't, actually. There were no cups available. It was for, I forget it was for, Medicare or something like that.
Mhm.
And so just in conversation, I was happened to be chatting with Amy on the way out and the BNA came up and she was talking about blood pressures and clinics and stuff like that and got into, it would be nice if we could do instead of just once a month, if we could do every week. So that's how that generated. I didn't get into at that point about, oh, how many, you know, numbers and so forth, but that the interest came from that conversation and that's when I presented it.
But you know, to start up, is what if we ask Deb Sarah if she would be interested to the partnership in doing, you know, picking up, doing it there
Once a
every other
month.
week? Well, no, Ian already does it once a month, but what if Deb did?
Well, that's what I'm saying. She doesn't, so Ann off a week. Deb off a week. So we'll get it twice a month. Kind of thing.
And where
Right.
BNA is doing it on one of those visits and the partnership is
Like,
taking
it
care of the
doesn't-
others.
And that would cost.
See, that would
Yeah.
cost.
Yeah, right,
It's good. Yeah.
yeah,
I know you'd raised the concept and a very good one about trying to see if we could secure a nurse. I know that we've made reference to possibly somebody within the
Right,
the
right.
group there that
yeah.
could
but
potentially, but
Actually, Deb is also interested in doing some presentations at the senior center as well, like the bike lab in particular. Well, you know, the season's coming up, the warm weather's coming, so it would be appropriate to have that type of presentation again.
For what? What did you
The
say?
bike lab,
Bite,
the-
B-I-T-E?
yes, the IT.
Mosquito bites and tick bites.
Bites and tick bites.
Okay,
Deborah does this whole presentation.
Okay.
And it may be, you know, she could do that at the same time.
We'll talk to her about it.
Yeah, we'll find out,
I thought you said bike. I thought you wanted them out on the bikes.
the bike lab,
Well,
and then she
I'll
does the germ thing too.
All right, so
That's
that's like,
one for the kids.
Right.
that's not helpful. Yeah.
Okay. If there's nothing else on that, we'll move on to agenda item number 7. Tobacco inspection training update under health agent.
Yep, gonna be, going out with the MHOA to start the tobacco.
Program.
Education and compliance checks. Was gonna start on March 11th.
Oh,
At 1
good.
o'clock.
Mhm.
And we'll be, our target is to do at least 3 tobacco vendors. I know she said 3 to 5, but I think that it will probably be more like 3, just, once we get through the education piece, looking at the store, making sure things properly posted and whatnot. I think it will take a little longer than that. So we're looking forward to doing that and start our tobacco compliance checks.
Good.
And education first.
Oh, yeah.
Now we're gonna do education first.
All right.
And then, at some point, we'll, fall in line with the compliance checks, and then that will be on a regular basis.
On the education side, does it change a lot year to year? Or is it a matter of,
The flavored tobaccos, and there's different ones that are accepted, and I'm gonna learn this when she comes on the 11th. Because that's an area, it can be confusing, but in Massachusetts, there's no flavored tobacco. But then there's these cigars that they're not necessarily flavored, but they have this particular wrap on them. So that's what I need clarification on, and that's what I'm gonna receive when I go out. I'm gonna shadow this person
Mhm.
from the MHOA. So I'm really looking forward to it and to clarify things with the vendors so they understand. One big part of what's gonna happen is we're gonna take those tobacco regulations with us and go through them with them.
Yeah,
Even though they checked off when they renewed their tobacco permit,
yeah,
yes, they understand this, we're gonna go back.
right. That's good.
so a lot of it's retraining?
Absolutely, well, and just reiteration of the tobacco regulations. You're aware, blah, 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 and what steps do you have you taken here in your store to make sure that you remain in compliance with those tobacco regulations? So it's, it's twofold. It's not just this is what the regulation says, it's also what are you doing to stay in compliance with the regulation?
Right.
Do you understand what you actually checked off?
Yeah.
Because they could just check it off, said, yep,
Yeah, because, yeah.
Give you
that's
my
easy.
check
That's
and-
easy. Yeah.
give me my permit.
Oh, yeah, I did this.
They
I
may
did
not have
that.
really understood everything they checked off. and
Right.
So that's a great.
Yeah.
So that will be, especially where it's been a period of time, and with the vendors, so that's gonna be the first part of it. Then there'll be the compliance checks.
Hmm.
And then that will be something that, hopefully we don't have to address with the board. That's my goal.
Good.
No, very good. And that, obviously, I like that approach because if we remember back to a year or a little more ago, there was we had someone come before us that we had to give some clarification to as to a particular paragraph to get them back on track. So, it very well could have been a paragraph that was read but not fully understood, but yet acknowledged. So there's no room for that.
No, that's why
Going
it's so
going through
important. I
everything
mean,
step by step.
Inspections, it's the same exact approach, education first, you have a conversation, make sure that the individual truly understands what you're discussing with them, and within, more importantly, what their responsibility is, because the board issued them a permit. They are now responsible for that permit
Fulfilling.
and all the
fulfilling
conditions
all
that
the
go with
conditions,
that.
right.
Right, so that's an important part of, any type of inspection process, in my opinion.
No, I think that's a great approach,
Absolutely.
and you always stress the education part first.
Yes. Because,
I think
and that's
a
the
great
other
approach.
thing too, is to keep the line of communication open, because if you don't ask, how do you learn?
Mhm.
And that's, and we're not just there for, punitive, if this is wrong, so and this is, this is the cost of that. That's not, in my opinion, I think that, education first, conversation, making sure that they're comfortable, making sure that the line of communication stays open. They making sure they're comfortable asking the questions so that we can both learn. I can learn too. I can learn about your operation, about your business. But at the end of the day, there is a regulation that you must follow. And to make sure they understand that.
So, if you're talking to the owner. So now is he encouraged, I guess is the word, to make all his staff know
Absolutely.
this, that
That's all part of
he
it.
has to tell them to do all A, B, C, and D? Because if you don't, we lose.
Right,
I
and
mean,
the thing
they-
is,
yeah.
right, is that, say like we did have a vendor that came before the board and, there was that we found flavored tobacco. Part of the process can also be to re-educate your staff. The board could require them, in addition to paying the fine, in addition to the completion of the suspension, if it's applicable, that you also are required to retrain your staff, and that's where the MHOA comes in, or the London Star Tobacco Alliance will come down and they will train them.
Right,
So that's another important component of it. And that's a question that I'm gonna be asking them when I go out on March 11th. Would you like your staff trained? And if they do, great, then that can be done. Because the compliance checks are gonna happen.
right,
So that's gonna be part of the approach as well.
right,
Very good.
right.
How do you handle, I'm thinking of a gas station convenience store that we've approved a license for, but have not been able to open because they haven't been able to get power, the way I understand.
Oh, really?
So
Correct.
they would be a permit holder at present,
Mhm.
but yet they're not actively engaging in business. How do we?
They won't be able to open until we go in and do an inspection. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Before, make sure the signage is up, make sure everything's up, because they're gonna have to have a food inspection anyway.
Right.
So actually, we're holding their permits in our office. Still calling, goes out there and do pre-inspections.
Okay,
I was wondering why, I just went by there today, actually. And I was wondering,
The transformer are backordered. And that's what he needs to operate.
oh,
There are no transformers in stock.
Yeah, that's a problem everywhere.
wow,
Did that just kind of come up last minute?
This has been going on for months.
They wanted to initially
Oh,
open like,
October?
right,
They
in
want to open
October,
October.
yeah,
imagine,
yeah, I had heard somewhere along the line there was like a long line to get hooked up.
yes,
I didn't hear anything about a shortage of transformers, but the construction side of the business was so busy
Mhm.
that you had to almost like make your request months before you actually needed them to show up in order to keep your construction schedule.
Mhm.
And then I believe you and I, Jack, had a conversation about why they weren't open, and that's when you
Yeah.
let me know.
it's unfortunate,
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of months
But
with
it's not state, but it's,
sitting there.
they're ready to
because
go,
every time I go by it, I think, oh, they're open. Nope, they're not open.
no,
yeah, no,
Yeah,
no.
they just do the transformer.
But we will be doing a, pre-opening inspection as well,
Okay.
for both.
I just didn't know how you catch
right,
something like that into your rotation where technically they are a permit holder because we approved a permit, but they've had
Yeah,
this
they're not
delay
operating
open.
yet. And then we'll ask them to approach them the exact same way, would you like your staff trained?
right.
Very good.
And
Moving
then,
on.
yeah, food and, food inspections, believe it or not, food truck applications are
Coming out.
coming in. Vanderbilt Farm anticipates opening on April 25th. And we've had quite a few. I haven't received a schedule from them yet. But also doing the food inspections with the inspector from the partnership.
Mhm.
Dominique's been out there and he's been doing some inspections. He will be doing the school cafeterias very shortly. So we are up to date on our food inspection for our food establishments. We are current.
Great.
When's the drive-in open?
I haven't gotten a date from them, but I'm doing George's next Tuesday. Yep.
You like George's?
Like George's.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's the
First
secret.
Wednesday of March, I think I
March,
saw
yeah.
the sign say.
yeah,
March.
yeah.
So the drive-in can't be too far behind.
No, I haven't heard from them yet. It's a good idea. I should give them a call because I gave, Gabrielle,
Gabriel.
a call and I said, hey, do you have an idea when you're gonna open? She's like, oh my God, I'm gonna open in 2 weeks. I said, let me know what day.
Mhm.
And I did the same thing with Lisa. I'll give the drive-in.
Yeah, we do kind of have those seasonal.
Hazel.
Yeah.
uh,
And the food
businesses.
trucks, I mean, I think we're gonna be very busy this year.
Yeah,
Very,
they're already cussing in.
I
Good.
really do. I mean, there's other,
Getting the paperwork's the hardest thing.
yeah.
So,
So I'll
that's
take one
wonderful.
else, we have, there's a lot of residential kitchen permits,
A lot of what things?
residential kitchen
Oh,
permits.
Interesting.
Yes, a lot of them. Jack and I have been bogged down.
And what are they cooking? What are they making and selling?
Different
How are
things,
they
I mean,
doing it?
there's some cookies, breads,
Cake bowls.
yeah,
I heard
Cinnamon
of
bun?
I heard of.
yeah, bagels, cupcakes, a lot of cupcakes, fudge. Lot of fudge.
Hmm.
And then you'll see them, because I recognize them, like when I go to like Vantabach,
Right.
they're up there, they're a pop-up,
I think it's great that they're aware. However, they're being made aware that they need to get these things taken care of. So if they're talking to other people that have residential kitchens or people that do these pop-ups, et cetera, I'm glad that there's good information being shared that, oh, by the way, you need to apply for a residential, before there's a problem.
Absolutely.
Um,
And that's again, part of the education process, we'll go right back to the very basics. And as a matter of fact, they're gonna have Rock the Block again this year.
Oh, yes.
So we'll be busy, with that, and then, just the usual annual, festivities. So I look forward to
I'm glad people are sharing good information.
when you see the same food vendors, I mean, in Blackstone, and I've been, helping out Upton. And, it's the same, they're like, yeah,
You again?
I don't think they say that.
Oh, they do.
Hey, listen, you know what to expect
Exactly.
because it's the same for everybody all the time.
That's right.
So,
You're not surprised.
no. No,
No, they know, I mean, and that's the thing is important too, to establish that rapport where, if you are going to apply for a permit and it's on Mendon, what the expectations as a permit holder.
It's
And,
setting the tone.
yep. That's because safety first.
right, and if there's something you're deficient on, especially if things are regionalized here, that if you're deficient on it in Mendon, most likely, if you haven't fixed it, you're gonna be deficient in another one of our towns.
Mhm.
So,
Right, and that's the thing, that the food trucks. So this year, what we're doing too is because some of these establishments, some of these businesses have more than one truck. And they're only paying for one truck. So now we're putting a license plate number on it,
That makes great sense.
so that you'll know you inspected that truck. So if I pull up and it's a different truck, well, you're paying another permit fee.
Good.
yeah, that's a good catch.
Oh,
We'll switch a bait now and again.
Yeah, but I mean, you gotta treat everybody the same.
Yep.
So if there's someone who has 2 trucks and someone that has 10 trucks,
well, and here's the thing too, so truck A is, is completely operational. Truck B, sometimes the hot water doesn't work. Hot water is
Very
Yes.
important thing.
right, well, it's not a luxury, it's a necessity. So they're gonna know now because the license plate's on the permit, hell, I better get be fixed because
Right,
we're gonna know, I know that B doesn't have sufficient hot water, so what does that mean?
So it's not just sufficient just to have a potable water source. It actually, you have to have water that operates at a certain temperature.
Absolutely.
Why did I think that just a potable water source was sufficient?
Well, this is a portable kitchen essentially.
Right,
Versus-
within the vehicle, I mean, you can do
Yeah.
a potable hand wash station, but that's still, I mean, that would be like washing your hands in cold water.
I didn't know if the sanitizer kind of helped offset that.
Sanitizer is a secondary, not a primary.
Got it.
Wash your hands first. As a matter of fact, if I had to,
Cool.
if I had a choice between washing my hands and using sanitizer, I would be washing my hands every single time.
right.
I would agree.
I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
All right, before I move on, is there anything else? Because we have this nice document that we haven't discussed.
That's gonna be put on number 9.
Oh.
It's a 9 on there.
Very good. Okay. Topics not anticipated within 48 hours.
Then,
Okay, the only thing I have is I will share with you an observation I made. 43 Blackstone Street.
Yes.
I noticed survey stakes, at least on the front corners of the property, adjacent to the road. So something is happening there that I'm gonna assume.
we should have on next story for you. We had a visit today of Eric Dickinson, who's from Hopkinton, who will be installing a new septic system for 43 Blackstone Street.
Fantastic.
Hallelujah.
But I plan on calling him tomorrow because if he's installing a new septic system, that means that the system was inspected and it failed, so we need to know what that looks like, so.
Is he licensed in?
Did they do
No,
new
I told him
purchase
he's
and stuff like that?
He applied for the application, he took the application with him, Joyce, but I plan to have a conversation.
Yeah, because I'm not familiar with the name. I could be familiar with.
That's what he's not installing, he's a designer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And
he's the
he's
engineer.
familiar
Yeah,
with,
he's the engineer, not the installer.
Stevie Donatelli too. So,
All right.
No, good. The wheels are turning,
yeah,
you know, and.
Finally,
Yes,
after
we were
a
happy.
year and a half
Oh,
Yeah.
war.
more.
but that's okay, we'll have forward progress.
That's right. And that's really all we were looking for was, we got to keep moving in the right direction. So thank you very much for everyone's persistence on trying to get that taken care of.
Well, it's
I'll
good
call in to
that
Jack,
it's,
as far as I can
it's Greece.
Well, I think it was Karis's letter.
Well, yeah, well, that, you know,
That's sad that
that's,
some
that's,
legal letter to get back.
That's what,
that's
yeah,
interesting,
right.
you know,
How pathetic is that?
Mm.
but that's okay, like I said, we're
Yeah,
making forward progress
Right.
and we'll continue to move forward.
All right, that's all I had on topics not anticipated. So we'll move on to 9, good and welfare for the board.
Want me to go?
You go.
Well, I guess I could start with what Jack presented, number 9. It's, what this is represents I guess would be a draft of a letter that we would put out to, I believe we're just targeting this to our businesses and vendors.
All our vendors and contractors would be affected by this.
Would there be any reason, out of curiosity, to make residents aware?
That would be from a website, I would think, if they're part of the BOH alerts and news announcements.
All right. So essentially, this would be what was drafted up through myself and Jack, kind of put this together. Wanted to you look at it, not to firm now, but there's something to
All right.
you can ponder on. I know at some point we're
Well,
at the end of
I think
February.
that's a great idea because, and then they're not saying, what do you mean? I have to have another fee or.
Well, and we're giving them 9 months notice.
Right,
Of what. is
right, what's
take
gonna happen?
effect.
Yeah, right, I think that's great.
Well, we want to do this multiple times during the
Yes.
course of the next few months, right? So we probably want to get this one out sometime, I'm thinking March.
Yeah, so I'm going March, I'm thinking another big March, May, June, September.
Something like that.
Okay,
Or maybe-
Send out the-
Maybe even a little closer So maybe October. or something. But
Yeah.
Well, October, we usually,
Send out the permit.
yes.
That's true.
Right,
So September is 30 days before they're gonna start seeing the fees.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll see them on the applications.
Yeah,
so I think that's a great idea. I think that's very.
Yep.
Yeah, good job.
Jack too. Jack, actually, that
well-
last spot, that's all Jack.
The vote,
I had
the
something-
vote of you.
I had something different in there. And Jack, I like Jack's presentation,
There
but
you go. Teamwork.
together, everyone's teams.
That's
And-
exactly right.
Again, we tried to do this in the most thoughtful manner possible. To, bring something up to date.
it's the way the economic environment is.
Yeah, but you hate to just jump on that bandwagon just because.
No, well, I think we can validate the decision that was made,
Oh, absolutely.
no
Yeah.
question.
I think that's great. Hooray for you.
So
Great job.
good with the letter?
Yeah,
Yeah, we're good. We're good. Get it going.
because that gives them an update, first. That gives them a, hello, this is what's happening, kids.
Well, yeah, because if you look at the percentages, those can be scary, but when you
Right.
look at the actual dollars and cents, it makes sense.
Right,
Well, and when you consider the fact that most of our fees, if not like almost 100% of them, have not budged since 2009. That's been, I think, probably a pretty dramatic savings that we've been providing all these years. So it goes to the discussion, could we have reviewed sooner and adjusted sooner so that they didn't see a 25? Okay, but they did benefit all these
right,
years up to this point,
yeah,
so,
Well, and the department itself has had some restructuring.
oh, yeah, absolutely.
We've experienced, an increase of expenses because of this restructuring. So we've sort of been bringing the department more up to date itself. And therefore we incur the expenses of bringing it up to date. Whether, that's just, we have no choice. We have to try to stay with the times and things change real fast.
Right.
So our staffing and the amount of hours that it takes to make it run have increased.
for sure. I mean, and just, we want to do it right.
All right. Anything else on good and welfare for the board?
A couple of additional items, just
Please.
really kind of follow-ups. So, on the emergency drill contact list, are you able to validate? Am I?
No,
Ah,
because I can put you guys on there, but I talked to Jamie and asked her why, because your contact information is in there,
okay.
but it goes to the primary and secondary contact, which is me and Aaron.
Oh, okay.
But I can add as many contacts to get the alerts, so you want to get the alerts, because primary contact would be me.
Uh-huh.
If they can't get in contact with me, they go to Alan. And obviously, they expect us to inform everybody,
Got it.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
but I can put you on as to get the alerts and stuff if you want to have a. Never mind.
An uptick, yeah, I mean, I like to know what's going and I don't,
Okay.
but if that's gonna be a real inconvenience for you.
No, I just tell them, like, Joyce, that promise. Yeah,
Okay.
it's just like a little click button on their side.
Okay, yeah, because I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. I think I'd like to be on the list.
But you're on our other list,
Which list? Blacklist?
starts with S.
Okay, great.
Anything else, folks?
There's another one.
He's got another one.
Oh, good couple. I know from the last meeting, kind of follow up to what Alan mentioned about trying to reach out to Danielle about recommendations for hobbyists about bird flu. Did you have any success with that?
I didn't reach out to her. I decided to do it on my own, and I do have on the Board of Health website to protect your own chicken flocks from the bird flu.
Oh, awesome. Cool. Very good.
I was actually in Feeds and Needs yesterday or the day before. So I asked the girl that manages it if she had heard anything about any hobbyists having any issues.
Mhm.
And she said no.
Awesome.
So I was very happy to hear that, and I'm very happy to hear what Jack found.
Okay, pulled it out.
Let's see if it's on.
Oh.
Here.
clever.
Protect your chickens from the bird flu.
So it just says protect your chickens from bird flu, talks about bird flu, avian influenza. To help you navigate the uncertain time, we've compiled everything you need to know about bird flu is and its symptoms. So you do a little click button here.
Mhm.
And I created what is bird flu,
Very nice.
Yeah,
Good job.
how the bird flu spreads,
Yeah,
what to look for, preventative measures to protect your flock, and frequently asked questions,
Go get him.
and
but maybe you might have incorporated a cute graphic with of a sick chicken, but maybe that wouldn't have. That's so great.
well, I'm gonna put a chicken out there with the KFC sign behind it.
Yeah.
So that's what I put up there for the Board of Health for news and announcements.
Well, it's good to hear that no local hobbyists seem to be having issues. That's very reassuring, actually.
Yeah,
Related to that, though, I did hear about a woman in Wyoming who contracted it, and she contracted it from a home flock.
Hmm.
I don't know what part of Wyoming.
Mhm.
But I did hear that after our last meeting. So unfortunately, another human case.
Right.
And I've also heard, I'm trying to remember, I had shared the bald eagle that had to be put down
Right.
in Townsend at our last meeting. So unfortunately, there are, I thought I heard something about maybe some young cattle that were on a farm that had chickens that may have started to show some symptoms.
Mhm.
So unfortunately, it's getting kind of nasty. So I'm glad to hear that, we haven't heard of anything locally.
Mhm.
So that actually
Makes
goes
you
to the
wonder.
next question I had. Were we able to determine the status of our agricultural commission?
I asked, and they didn't know, so
Oh, okay.
I asked Alan, she wasn't too sure, and asked Dan Byron, he wasn't sure.
Yeah, okay.
And I asked somebody else, I didn't ask Jeremy directly.
I didn't think of talking to Pete
No, it's
last night.
just wondering.
Anything else?
Let's see. No. No, I'm good for now.
okay.
I know I'm hearing more and more about norovirus.
Yeah.
Speaking of proper hand washing. And couple of youngsters losing their life to the flu.
Yes,
Now, I don't know about, they don't share if there were any underlying illnesses before.
Weakness, yeah, some weakness.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it was premature or had, some type of horrible health condition that was just, the flu was the final.
Mm,
But kind of concerning. Kind of presents the question, vaccinate, don't vaccinate.
I think it's a no-brainer in my world, but, and actually, Dan and I both had the flu shot. Because when we were going to the Viking cruise,
yeah,
we both said, I said, we need to get totally prepared with everything. And when he went to the hospital, he ended up with the flu and pneumonia.
And that's after being vaccinated.
Yeah,
Was
well,
that
it was
6 months ago?
Yeah, like we got the vaccination in the beginning, at the end of July, because we were going on the cruise then. And yeah, so,
Well, again, the vaccination is supposed to help you get through it, not necessarily make you,
Cure.
right, yeah. it
well,
does.
you'd like to think that it sets up a barrier,
Yeah.
Yes,
right?
but, those two things are still rather concerning. It's nice that springtime is coming
Yeah,
and that people will be able to open their windows and doors and get outside and hopefully
Although
some,
not this weekend, because it's supposed to get real cold again.
well, 30s is not bad.
yeah, it was terrible when it was
Oh, my
12,
God.
12, and I was out trying to
Yeah, 12 and icy.
clean off the car to get him
So,
back to the
yeah, so
house.
30 and muddy. would be tough.
Yeah, right.
All right, that's all I have. Nobody else has anything. Again, still no one in the audience. We can set our next meeting.
Next meeting will be March 12th.
Well, actually, it's not March 12th.
That will actually be March 5th for the,
Well, I was thinking like directly for our board meeting on
Right, but I,
But we're going to
March
be,
12th.
we're gonna be with Jeremy and the
March 5th would be the
seniors.
multiple committees with select board and finance committee.
Right, what day is that? Is that a
March 5th, Wednesday.
Wednesday?
So a week from today.
we'll have to post that though, because we're coming as a,
I think that's why I brought it up,
yes.
just to make sure we don't mislead anybody that, anybody listening to the recording. We are gonna have a meeting,
March 5th.
March 5th, and then our
March
regular
12th will be
meeting
at
on the
normal.
12th.
All right. What time is it, do you know?
6 P.M.
6?
on both.
Okay,
Oh, it is, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
so it's March 5th.
Yep.
And it's up here?
Yes.
If we don't have, I'm gonna sneeze. If we don't have anything else, I'll have a motion to adjourn, please.
It's your turn.
Okay, I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Second,
All in favor?
Tom, aye.
Joyce,
Joyce,
aye,
aye.
Alan, aye.
Good night, all.
Good night.
ta-da.